Lamar Odom won 2 NBA championships beside Kobe Bryant. Then, one October afternoon, workers found him unconscious inside a private room in rural Nevada. The owner of that establishment said Odom had paid $75,000 for a 4-day stay. By the time those 4 days were over, the man who once ran the floor for the Los Angeles Lakers could not stand, speak, or open his eyes. Odom would later say doctors told him he had suffered 12 strokes and 6 heart attacks while he was in a coma. 12 strokes, 6 heart attacks. And somehow, Lamar Odom woke up. But that is not the mystery. The real mystery is how one of Kobe Bryant's most beloved teammates reached that room in the first place. How did a man survive the loss of his mother, the death of his infant son, years of public humiliation, and the end of his NBA career, only to spend $75,000 disappearing from the world for 4 days? Was Lamar Odom destroyed by fame, by grief, by Hollywood, by the Lakers? Or had basketball been hiding the truth for years, that the game was not curing his pain, only keeping it busy? And when his body finally stopped cooperating, why did it start again? To understand why Lamar Odom woke up in Nevada, we have to understand why he spent his entire life running toward basketball every time death entered the room. Long before the championship parades, the reality cameras, and the $75,000 bill, Lamar Odom was a boy in Queens, learning that people could disappear without warning. His father, Joe, left the home when Lamar was young. Joe was fighting a destructive dependency of his own, and for a child, the reason barely mattered. A father who is absent is still absent. Lamar remembered better days, playing catch, seeing the man he wanted his father to be, but he also remembered what dependency did to that relationship. Then, when Lamar was 12, his mother Kathy died from colon cancer. There are losses a child understands, and losses a child simply carries. This was the second kind. Kathy was not only his mother, she was the stable center of a life already missing one parent. When she was gone, Lamar moved into the care of his grandmother, Mildred Mercer. He still had family. He still had love, but he no longer had the one thing every child quietly assumes will always be there: permanence. Lamar carried the people he lost onto the court in small, visible ways. He wrote his mother's name on his basketball shoes. He wore number 7 because it had been his grandmother's lucky number. Years later, fans would see Odom across the back of a Lakers jersey. Lamar saw Kathy on his feet and Mildred in the number below his name. That mattered because basketball was never merely a profession waiting in his future. It became a portable home. New school, new coach, new city. The ball still felt the same in his hands. Every adult relationship could become complicated. The game remained available. Basketball became the closest substitute. A basketball court did not leave in the middle of the night. A rim did not become sick. The lines stayed in the same place. The rules made sense. If Lamar made the right pass, the ball went where he sent it. If he rose above a defender, nobody could take that moment away from him. That may sound poetic. It was also dangerous. Because once adults discovered how good Lamar Odom was, basketball stopped belonging only to him. He was 6'7" while still growing, but he moved like a guard. He could grab a rebound, turn up the floor without making an outlet pass, and see an opening before everyone else realized it existed. Coaches did not know whether to call him a forward, a point guard, or something that had not been invented yet. At Christ the King High School, Odom scored 36 points in a city championship game as a sophomore. That should have been the night everything became easier. Instead, one respected New York scout later called it the worst thing that could have happened to him. Think about that. A 15-year-old dominates a championship game, and the adults closest to the sport look back and say the success arrived too soon. Why? Because after that performance, Lamar was no longer treated like a child who happened to be brilliant at basketball. He became an investment. Recruiters called, coaches promised, shoe company people hovered. Amateur basketball figures offered guidance while quietly calculating what his future might be worth. Everyone wanted to help Lamar Odom, Far too many of them wanted to help themselves first. The scout Tom Konchalski said people began making Lamar feel like Superman. The problem was that Superman was still a teenager who had lost his mother, barely knew where his father belonged in his life, and had no experience identifying which smiling adult carried a hidden invoice. This is where the usual sports fairy tale tells you that talent rescued him. It did not. Talent made every warning negotiable. His grades slipped. Rules began to look optional. Lamar bounced from Christ the King to Redemption Christian Academy and then to St. Thomas Aquinas. 3 schools in his senior year. Each new group of adults believed it could manage the most gifted young player in New York. And what did Lamar think they saw when they looked at him? Years later, he gave the answer himself. He said he felt like a sports object. He saw grown men fighting over children and could not understand why everybody needed control. That sentence explains more about Lamar Odom than any box score. Adults praised the gift and negotiated around the person. Another school would open its door. Another coach would make a call. Consequences could always wait. Lamar had plenty of people around him. What he did not have was one system strong enough to say no and remain after saying it. By 1997, the biggest programs in America wanted his signature, but even that recruitment turned into a public spectacle. He reportedly carried 2 college caps before announcing his choice, still undecided minutes before the press conference. Kentucky was one possibility. UNLV became the answer. Las Vegas was already part of Lamar Odom's story before it nearly became the final page. The UNLV chapter collapsed before he played a game. Questions surrounded his entrance exam. A Sports Illustrated report suggested that improper help may have been involved. The allegation was never proved, and Odom denied cheating. But proof did not matter to the machinery already moving around him. The scholarship disappeared. Recruiting relationships were investigated. Rumors became more powerful than the teenager at the center of them. This was the first great Lamar Odom scandal, and it established a pattern the public would repeat for the next 2 decades. Something went wrong. Adults argued about who was responsible. Lamar moved on before anybody truly fixed it. He landed at Rhode Island, first forced to wait, then finally allowed to play. For one season, the noise quieted enough for the basketball to speak again, and it spoke beautifully. In the 1999 Atlantic 10 championship game against Temple, Rhode Island needed one final basket. The ball found Odom near the top. He created just enough room, released a 3-pointer, and watched it fall at the buzzer. Championship. The shot turned an unstable college journey into one clean picture. Odom backpedaled as teammates rushed toward him. Rhode Island had its first Atlantic 10 tournament championship. The same young man who had been treated like a recruiting scandal now owned the final second of the season. That is why the scene belongs in this story. Lamar did not merely escape trouble. He repeatedly answered trouble with something spectacular. Every spectacular answer encouraged people to believe the underlying problem had disappeared. It had not disappeared. It had been drowned out by cheering. For a moment, Lamar Odom was not a controversy, a test score, a recruiting investigation, or a young man surrounded by suspicious adults. He was exactly what everyone had promised, the rare player who could decide a season with one touch. That shot should have made the next step simple. Nothing with Lamar Odom was ever simple. He declared for the NBA draft. Then the business frightened him. He missed the league's scouting combine. He missed scheduled workouts. Teams wondered whether this was another act of defiance, another warning sign, or simply a 19-year-old panicking as strangers discussed his life in millions of dollars. Odom later explained it plainly. He did not know whom to trust. "All I've got is you," he remembered telling himself. That is not the statement of a spoiled prospect. It is the statement of a young man standing inside a crowded room and feeling completely alone. Chicago held the first pick. The Bulls had seen enough talent to imagine Lamar Odom as the next great all-around star. But talent was not the question. Trust was. Chicago chose Elton Brand. Vancouver chose Steve Francis. Charlotte chose Baron Davis. 3 players selected before Odom. Chicago had chosen safety. Vancouver and Charlotte chose players who better matched their immediate plans. Whatever the reason, the prospect some evaluators considered the most talented player in the draft was still waiting. Then the Los Angeles Clippers called his name with the 4th pick. Odom arrived in Los Angeles carrying a Magic Johnson comparison, a Queens childhood, a trail of rumors, and the expectation that he would rescue a franchise that had spent years teaching its own fans not to expect rescue. He was 19. In his first NBA game, he scored 30 points and collected 12 rebounds. There was no careful adjustment period, no polite introduction. Lamar Odom walked into the league and immediately looked like a player created 15 years too early. The performance was so smooth that it almost hid how unusual it was. Rookie forwards were supposed to wait for guards to deliver the ball. Odom could take the rebound himself, wave everybody forward, and begin the offense without permission. One possession, he looked like a power forward. The next, he crossed a defender over at the top of the floor. Then he threw a pass that made people in the first rows turn toward one another before the scorer had even finished the play. He finished his rookie season at roughly 17 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists per game, and made the all-rookie first team. Those were not empty flashes from an experimental prospect. Lamar already looked capable of becoming the center of an entire offense. The problem was that the Clippers kept confusing exciting talent with an actual team. Elton Brand arrived. Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson brought youth, energy, and the kind of style magazines could sell. The group became fashionable before it became dependable. They smiled, ran, produced highlights, and talked as if the future had already arrived. Then they lost more games than they won. For a player like Kobe Bryant, losing created anger. For Lamar Odom, it often created drift. The difference mattered. Kobe responded to chaos by trying to control every possession. Lamar responded by searching for connection, and the Clippers rarely provided enough of it. That does not absolve him. A franchise can be unstable, and a player can still be responsible for arriving ready. Odom's suspensions were not created by a bad offensive system, but Los Angeles gave him the worst possible confirmation of the lesson he had learned as a teenager. Even after serious mistakes, the spectacular player would remain central because the organization needed his talent. The Clippers did not have the power to make Lamar feel secure, and Lamar did not yet have the discipline to create security for himself. Today, basketball celebrates 6'10" creators who bring the ball up, initiate offense, switch defensively, and play every position. In 1999, coaches still wanted labels. Odom made labels look stupid. Pat Riley would later compare his versatility to Magic Johnson. Opponents saw a forward they could not comfortably guard with a forward. Put a smaller defender on him, and Lamar could see over him. Put a big man on him, and Lamar could take the ball away from the basket and turn the matchup into a chase. But the Clippers were not the Lakers. They had young talent, little stability, and a reputation for turning promise into frustration. Odom could produce dazzling nights, yet the team kept losing. The beautiful passes became highlights inside another disappointing season, and away from the court, the old lesson returned. Talent could postpone consequences. The league suspended Odom twice within 8 months for violations of its prohibited substance policy. The second time, he sat before reporters in tears. He was not a mysterious high school prospect anymore. He was a paid professional, and the excuses were running out. Years later, Nevada would produce a $75,000 bill and a hospital bed. But the pattern was already visible here. Crisis, apology, another chance, then the belief that consequences could wait one more time. People prefer 2 easy versions of Lamar Odom. One makes him a motherless victim, surrounded by opportunists. The other makes him an irresponsible star who wasted endless opportunities. Both are incomplete. Lamar was hurt. Lamar also hurt himself. Adults failed him when he was young. He kept using the habits they allowed long after he was old enough to know better. That tension is the story. The Clippers eventually let him leave. In 2003, Pat Riley and the Miami Heat offered a fresh beginning. Miami had structure, expectations, and a young guard named Dwyane Wade. Odom responded with the finest statistical season of his career, more than 17 points, nearly 10 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. Riley did not recruit Odom because he felt sorry for him. He saw a basketball weapon. Beside rookie Dwyane Wade and Karen Butler, Lamar finally played meaningful spring basketball. Miami survived a 7-game series against New Orleans before pushing the 61-win Indiana Pacers to 6. The Heat had won only 25 games the season before Odom arrived. With Lamar and Wade, they won 42 and reached the second round. That was the Lamar Odom paradox in one season. Give him responsibility inside a strong structure, and the entire team grows. Odom looked renewed. Wade looked like a future superstar. Miami appeared to have built something worth keeping. Then Shaquille O'Neal became available. To bring Shaq to Miami, the Heat sent Lamar Odom, Karen Butler, Brian Grant, and a first-round pick to Los Angeles. Miami used Odom's best season to purchase a bigger star. 2 years later, Shaq and Wade would win the championship Odom had helped position the Heat to chase. That is not betrayal. That is professional basketball. But how many times can one man be told not to take business personally when the business keeps rearranging his life? High schools had moved him. UNLV had closed its door. The draft had frightened him. The Clippers had raised him inside instability. Miami had restored him and immediately placed him inside one of the largest trades in league history. Each move made basketball sense to somebody. Lamar was the person expected to absorb all of them without changing. Odom had finally found stability, and success immediately made him valuable enough to be moved again. But this time, the destination mattered. The Lakers did not merely acquire a versatile forward. They brought Lamar Odom into Kobe Bryant's world. Kobe and Lamar had known each other since their teenage basketball days. They understood the same language, but they spoke it with opposite accents. Kobe attacked every weakness as if it had insulted him. Lamar felt everything, absorbed everything, and often seemed to play his best when the game allowed him to connect other people rather than dominate them. Kobe wanted the responsibility of the final shot. Lamar wanted to make the pass that made the final shot possible. On paper, that difference could have separated them. In practice, it became the reason they worked. The Lakers initially tried to turn Odom into the second star beside Kobe. He averaged a double-double in his first season in purple and gold, but the team missed the playoffs. The Shaq era had ended in anger. Phil Jackson was gone for a year. Kobe was fighting the league, the media, and the impossible expectation that he prove he could win without the most dominant center of his generation. Lamar entered that storm with a game built on rhythm and trust. Los Angeles demanded certainty from a man who had never lived with much of it. When Phil Jackson returned in 2005, the triangle offense gave Odom a language he understood. It demanded reads, spacing, and instinct instead of waiting for a coach to call every movement. Lamar could rebound like a power forward, handle like a guard, and enjoy another man's basket as much as his own. Progress still came in frustrating pieces. The Lakers built a 3-1 playoff lead over Phoenix in 2006, then watched the Suns escape Game 6 in overtime and complete the comeback in Game 7. Then life tested whether basketball could still protect Lamar. In June 2006, Odom was in New York for an aunt's funeral when his infant son, Jaden, died in his sleep. Jaden was 6.5 months old. The date was June 28th, the same calendar date on which Odom's grandmother Mildred had died 3 years earlier. The date was not some poetic detail added years later. It was another blow landing on the same wound. Lamar tried to believe his grandmother had come for the child. Maybe that was faith. Maybe it was simply the only explanation he could survive. When Odom spoke publicly months later, he placed a Bible on the table. He said, "I feel a little lost sometimes. That interview was not a polished comeback announcement. Odom was a grieving father, trying to explain why he had already returned to the same job that demanded travel, practice, and performance on command. The Lakers could give him compassionate teammates. They could not stop the calendar, and Lamar did not ask them to. He went back because basketball was the only place where the next instruction was always clear. Sometimes, the man had lost his mother at 12. His grandmother had raised him and then died. Now his baby was gone on the same date. The remarkable part was not that Lamar felt lost. The remarkable part was how often the world expected him to look found. He stayed busy, too busy. He admitted that he had not truly taken time to mourn. "I almost was probably too strong," he said. Listen to what happened after Odom called himself too strong. He returned to work, he answered questions, he smiled for cameras. The games continued, so from the outside, it looked as if Lamar had continued too. But the NBA schedule hadn't buried his son. It had only given Lamar somewhere else to be. The Lakers became more than an employer. Kobe, Derek Fisher, Phil Jackson, practices, film sessions, flights, and games gave every day a shape. Basketball kept Lamar moving. It did not settle what happened when the arena went quiet. He said being back around his teammates made him feel better. 1 year later, Phoenix eliminated Los Angeles again. The Lakers had Kobe's brilliance and Lamar's versatility, but brilliance and versatility were not yet enough. Odom could give them 19 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 assists one night, then leave fans demanding to know where the aggression had gone the next. The criticism was not invented. Lamar did sometimes drift, but the demand that he become Kobe misunderstood why Kobe needed him. Two Kobes would have fought over control. Kobe and Lamar could divide it. Then Pau Gasol arrived in February 2008, and suddenly the pieces fit. Kobe attacked. Pau steadied the middle. Lamar rebounded, pushed the ball, defended different positions, and connected one star to the other. Talk radio still asked why a man that talented could disappear for entire quarters. The Lakers found a better question. Why keep forcing Odom to score like a superstar when his unselfishness could make two superstars better? Los Angeles stopped demanding a smaller version of Kobe Bryant. It finally used Lamar Odom as Lamar Odom. The clearest evidence appeared before games. The Lakers locked arms in a circle, and Lamar often stood in the middle. He was not the captain or the leading scorer. Yet this roster of champions gathered around the player who had spent childhood searching for somewhere permanent. Odom would bounce, raise the energy, and shout, "We're the best team in the NBA." The line sounds ordinary until you picture the room. Kobe trusted him. Fisher trusted him. Phil trusted him. A roster built to win a championship waited for Lamar Odom to supply its voice. The teenager once passed from school to school was now helping hold the Lakers together. This was the family the trade would later break. For Lamar Odom, family was never just a basketball word. That is why the championships matter so much, and why the trade that came later mattered more than the Lakers seemed to understand. The first attempt at a title ended in humiliation. In 2008, Los Angeles returned to the NBA Finals and met Boston. The Celtics did not merely defeat the Lakers. They closed the series with a 39-point destruction in Game 6. Green confetti fell while Kobe, Lamar, Pau, and the rest of Los Angeles walked away carrying the image of Boston celebrating over them. For Odom, it was another familiar experience. Reach the place that is supposed to complete the story, then discover that the ending has been taken away. The Lakers returned the next season harder and deeper. Lamar accepted a move to the bench even though he was entering a contract year and could have complained that a player of his ability deserved to start. At first, he did complain. He reportedly wondered whether Phil Jackson had bumped his head. Then he made the sacrifice. On paper, the bench looked like a demotion. On the floor, Phil Jackson used Odom almost everywhere. He replaced a center, a power forward, or a ball handler. He ran the second unit, returned to the starting lineup when injuries struck, and finished the games that mattered. The 2009 Lakers reached the finals against Orlando. This time, they finished. Kobe won his fourth championship. Pau Gasol erased the softness accusations. Phil Jackson collected another ring. Lamar Odom became an NBA champion. Watch the celebration, and you can see what the title meant to him. This was not simply professional validation. The ring was evidence that all the movement had led somewhere. Queens, 3 high schools, UNLV without a game, Rhode Island, the Clippers, Miami, the trade for Shaq, the loss of his son, the humiliation in Boston, now a championship. For once, the ending stayed in his hands. 1 year later, Boston returned. The 2010 finals went 7 games. Game 7 became a fight over rebounds, loose balls, and nerve. It was exactly the kind of night when Odom's unglamorous work stopped being optional. The Lakers survived. 2 championships with Kobe Bryant, 2 parades through Los Angeles. 2 moments that seemed to prove Lamar Odom had finally outrun the instability behind him. 5 years later, that champion would be found unconscious after a $75,000 stay in Nevada. Nobody at the parade could see that room waiting for him. That is how completely basketball could hide the trouble underneath it. The titles settled one argument. Odom never became Magic Johnson or made an all-star team, but 3 straight finals runs exposed how foolish it was to call him a disappointment. He rebounded, defended in space, carried the ball, and became a playmaking big man whenever Pau sat. Kobe was the demand. Pau was the calm. Lamar was the permission for everybody else to remain themselves. That is why teammates loved him. Lamar had finally found the role that made everybody else better. But the banners hid a dangerous question. Had Lamar Odom repaired his life, or had the Lakers simply built a structure strong enough to keep the damage out of sight? The answer began arriving almost as soon as that structure disappeared. The season after the second championship, Odom played all 82 games. He averaged more than 14 points, nearly 9 rebounds, and 3 assists, while shooting a career-best 53%. He started when injuries demanded it and returned to the bench without asking the team to rearrange itself around his pride. In April 2011, Lamar Odom became the NBA's 6th Man of the Year. He was the first Laker ever to win the award. The trophy finally made his strange value impossible to ignore. Odom started only 35 games, yet he could replace almost anyone and still finish in the lineup Phil Jackson trusted. The player once called unreliable had become the teammate the Lakers relied upon whenever a game changed shape. Kobe, Pau, Fisher, and the rest of the locker room already knew it. Now the league had put a trophy in Lamar's hands. Lakers general manager Mitch Kupchak made the point plainly. Odom, he said, could have started for virtually any team in the league. The bench role worked because Lamar accepted it for the team. That matters. This was not a consolation trophy for a fading player. It was the strongest individual season of his career, arriving only months before the Lakers decided he was expendable. If Lamar Odom's story had ended on that stage, it would have looked like proof that talent, patience, and the right family could repair everything. 8 months later, that family traded him. The award stage had not been a conclusion. It was the last peaceful page before everything broke. Because while Lamar's basketball life had finally found a clear role, his public life was becoming louder than the game itself. He had married Khloe Kardashian in 2009 after an extremely short courtship. Reality cameras followed. Entertainment magazines counted the days, photographed the wedding, judged the marriage, and turned a basketball player already uncomfortable with trust into a character inside somebody else's weekly story. The easy version says, Hollywood destroyed Lamar Odom. That is too convenient. Hollywood did not kill his mother. A television camera did not take his infant son. Celebrity did not invent the fear, the dependency, or the habit of escaping pain instead of sitting with it. But celebrity gave every private weakness a larger room. It provided money, access, attention, and an audience hungry for collapse. It made it possible for Lamar to be surrounded every hour and still avoid an honest conversation. It also taught him that even his worst moments could become content for someone else. The public saw a strange contradiction. On television, Lamar could appear warm, funny, almost childlike. In basketball, teammates described him as the emotional center of a championship group. Yet the same man could disappear inside himself, make choices that endangered his family, and return expecting affection to erase the damage. This is where sympathy must not become dishonesty. Lamar Odom suffered enormous losses. He also created new losses for other people. Pain explains the door he kept walking through. It does not excuse what happened after he entered. During the summer of 2011, another chain of tragedy arrived. A cousin Odom was close to was killed. Soon afterward, Lamar was a passenger in a vehicle involved in a collision that killed a teenage pedestrian. Odom was not driving, but grief does not wait for legal responsibility before entering the body. Then Phil Jackson retired. The coach who understood Lamar's unusual game was gone. The Lakers' routines were changing. The championship group was aging. And in December, Odom learned that Los Angeles had agreed to send him and Paul Gasol away in a massive trade for Chris Paul. The deal did not happen. The league blocked it. But once Lamar saw his name inside the transaction, the emotional damage was already complete. To an ordinary player, a proposed trade is business. Painful, perhaps insulting, but business. To Lamar Odom, it sounded like an old message delivered by a new voice. You are valuable until somebody wants something more valuable. The Lakers had given him a family. Then, immediately after his best individual season, they had been willing to exchange him. Was that unfair? In basketball terms, number Chris Paul was one of the best guards alive. Every responsible front office considers that trade, but human beings do not experience transactions only in basketball terms. Odom skipped the first day of training camp and asked to be moved. He told the Los Angeles Times, "You don't want to go to no place you're not wanted." Kobe Bryant was furious. "To be honest with you, I don't like it," he said after the Lakers sent Lamar to Dallas. Derek Fisher went even further. If he had the choice, Lamar would be a Laker for life. The people inside the locker room understood what the front office had treated as a line on a payroll sheet. Lamar was not just leaving a team, he was losing the structure that had held his life together. Years later, Odom made a statement that sounds exaggerated until you examine what followed. That trade from the Lakers basically ended my career and purpose. Not his career alone, his purpose. That is an alarming word for any retired athlete. It is even more alarming from a man who had used basketball as shelter since his mother died. 4 years later, newspapers would call Nevada the collapse. But the fall did not begin in that private room. It accelerated here, when the last stable structure in Lamar Odom's life told him he was movable after all. Dallas expected a champion. The Mavericks had just defeated Miami for the 2011 title. Dirk Nowitzki praised Odom's versatility. Coach Rick Carlisle imagined a front court with length, passing, scoring, and experience. On paper, Dallas had acquired one of the league's smartest all-around players for almost nothing. The transaction itself made Lamar's humiliation worse. Dallas did not surrender a star to get him. The Mavericks used an $8.9 million trade exception and sent draft considerations to Los Angeles. One of Kobe Bryant's championship brothers had been converted into financial flexibility. Dallas celebrated the bargain. The Lakers celebrated the savings. Lamar arrived knowing that the team he loved had calculated exactly how much easier its future would be without his salary. That is the cold language of professional sports. It is also the worst possible language for a man who had spent his life wondering whether people valued him or only what they could receive in return. On the floor, they received a man who looked as though he had left part of himself in Los Angeles. Odom arrived out of condition after a chaotic summer. His role was unclear. His rhythm vanished. Shots missed. Minutes fell. Frustration grew. Fans who had watched him connect every piece of the Lakers could not understand why he looked disconnected from everything in Dallas. Kobe could. He said the Mavericks did not understand how to unlock Lamar's mystery. Dallas already had a system and an established star at Odom's natural position. The team wanted him to fit into the available spaces. The Lakers had learned to move the spaces around him, but basketball tactics explain only part of it. Lamar did not merely play badly, he seemed emotionally absent. Dallas sent him briefly to its developmental league affiliate, then called him back before he played there. By April, the Mavericks and Odom agreed that he should step away from the team. His numbers were brutal: 6.6 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, and 35% shooting, all career lows. 9 months earlier, he had been the best sixth man in the NBA. Now the defending champions did not want him near their playoff rotation. Put the calendar beside the collapse. In April 2011, Odom stood with the sixth-man trophy. In December, the Lakers sent him to Dallas. By the following April, the Mavericks were sending him home. Less than 1 year separated the highest individual honor of his NBA career from the moment a championship contender decided it functioned better without him. How does a player's game disappear that quickly, without a major physical injury? Sometimes the body remains in uniform after the purpose has already gone home. Odom returned to the Clippers for the 2012-13 season. Los Angeles hoped familiar streets might restore familiar instincts. There were glimpses, but not a resurrection. He averaged 4 points. When the season ended, so did his NBA career, although nobody held a ceremony and nobody announced that the final game was final. The game that had organized Lamar Odom's life simply stopped calling. This is the part many athlete stories rush past. We celebrate retirement when a legend chooses the date, waves to the crowd, and receives a standing ovation. But most careers do not end that way. The phone becomes quieter. A contract fails to appear. A workout leads nowhere. Yesterday's champion is still young enough to remember everything his body could do, but no longer important enough for the league to wait. For Lamar, that silence was not retirement. It was exposure. Without practice, flights, film sessions, and teammates, there was nothing between him and the pain he had been postponing since Queens. And the public did not look away. Tabloids reported trouble in his marriage. Cameras followed rumors of infidelity, reckless nights, missing days, financial waste, and relapse. Some stories were documented. Others were anonymous whispers repeated until they sounded official. The line between legitimate concern and profitable humiliation disappeared. The easiest headline blamed the Kardashians. Another blamed the Lakers. Another blamed the people around him. Here is the harder truth. Everybody may have contributed to the environment, but Lamar Odom still made Lamar Odom's decisions. The Lakers' trade did not force him to disappear. Fame did not sign every bill. Grief did not make every choice. Those forces weakened him, tempted him, and gave him places to hide. He chose to keep hiding. In 2013, Odom faced another public arrest involving unsafe driving. His marriage continued to collapse. Reports described attempts at treatment followed by renewed trouble. Friends and family tried to reach him. Sometimes he accepted help. Sometimes he pulled away. This was not one dramatic fall. It was a staircase. One missed warning, one broken promise, one private night that became a public scandal. One opportunity to stop, followed by another explanation for why stopping could wait. And because Lamar had survived so much already, survival itself may have become a trap. His mother died, but Lamar kept playing. His grandmother died, but Lamar kept playing. His infant son died, but Lamar returned to the Lakers. Boston humiliated him, but he won 2 championships. The Lakers traded him, but another team still called. Every disaster had eventually been followed by another morning. Why would the next one be different? In October 2015, Lamar Odom went to rural Nevada. He arrived on October 10th. By October 13th, the 4-day escape was ending in an emergency call. There was no team bus waiting, no trainer knocking with a practice schedule, and no Kobe Bryant demanding that Lamar get up for the next possession. Basketball had finally disappeared from the room completely. Not the bright casino corridor seen in television commercials. Not an NBA arena. Not a championship hotel filled with teammates and security. He traveled to a legal adult establishment outside the city, surrounded by desert and distance. The owner later said Odom paid $75,000 for a minimum 4-day stay. $75,000. 4 days. That number became a punchline for people who had never spent a night inside Lamar Odom's head. What exactly was he buying? Company? Privacy? Oblivion? Or simply 4 days during which nobody expected him to be a father, former husband, champion, celebrity, disappointment, or miracle waiting to happen? The owner said Lamar wanted peace and quiet away from the pressure of his life. That phrase sounds almost absurd beside a $75,000 bill. Yet it may be the most revealing detail of the entire episode. A man once paid millions to perform before 20,000 people was now paying a fortune to vanish from everyone. For several days, he remained largely secluded. A dangerous mixture entered the story. The exact sequence became a battlefield of claims. Staff members described what they had seen. Authorities investigated what might have happened. Tabloids filled every unanswered hour with increasingly dramatic versions. We do not need to pretend that every rumor was true. The verified ending was terrible enough. On October 13th, workers entered Lamar Odom's room and found him unconscious. He was not responding. An emergency call went out. Instructions came through the phone. Responders arrived. The former NBA forward was so tall that transportation became more complicated and precious time passed on the long road toward a Las Vegas hospital. Then the story split in two. Outside the hospital, the celebrity circus returned. Cameras gathered. Television networks replayed the same photographs. Commentators asked whether Lamar Odom was dying. People who had mocked him 48 hours earlier suddenly spoke about tragedy with solemn voices. Inside the hospital, there was no headline clever enough for what his family saw. Machines were keeping him alive. His organs were failing. He could not speak for himself. The man whose entire career depended on controlling a basketball could not control his own body. Family members came. Friends came. Former teammates came. Kobe Bryant went to Las Vegas. Kobe had been at a Lakers preseason game. When word reached the organization, basketball stopped mattering. The man who had once barked at Odom for drifting through possessions left the NBA night behind and went to the hospital. No camera needed to manufacture the meaning. When Lamar's championship family heard that he might be dying, it came back. The teammate who had demanded more from Lamar than almost anyone now arrived when Lamar could offer nothing. No rebound, no pass, no joke in the locker room, no solution. Only a body in a bed and the possibility that time had run out. Odom's children asked the public to keep praying. His estranged wife remained involved in the medical decisions and the long first stage of recovery. Old arguments were suspended because death has a way of making every smaller dispute look embarrassed. Days passed. The public heard fragments: critical condition, life support, small signs of response. Nobody outside the hospital knew which report to trust. Some prepared for an obituary. Then Lamar Odom opened his eyes. Reports said he communicated. A family statement spoke of miraculous progress. The ending everyone had already written refused to happen. Then came a different kind of box score. A response, a word, a movement, eventually steps. Each small report traveled through television as if it were a playoff update because the public had spent days preparing to hear that Lamar Odom was gone. Instead, the numbers began moving in the other direction. But waking up is not the same as walking away. Odom would later say doctors told him he had suffered 12 strokes and 6 heart attacks while he was in the coma. He called himself a walking miracle. The phrase is not exaggeration. One stroke can permanently change a life. One heart attack can end it. Lamar described 12 and 6, and somehow consciousness returned. Yet when he woke, much of the body he remembered was gone. He could not immediately walk. He struggled to speak. Basic movements required help. The former point forward who could cross half court with one dribble and place a pass into a moving teammate's hands had to relearn actions ordinary people perform without thought. Later, when he tried to play competitive basketball again, Odom admitted that his dribbling no longer felt natural. That gift, the one thing that had always obeyed him, had changed. Here was the cruel exchange Nevada left behind. Lamar survived the night that nearly killed him, but the survival damaged the basketball ability that had always carried him back. So what did he have left? For the first time, he had to confront life without the old hiding place. Recovery became slow, humiliating, and public. He worked on walking. He worked on speaking. He tried to rebuild memory. In 2019, he admitted that his short-term memory remained frighteningly poor. He could remember reading defenses that no longer existed, but ordinary pieces of recent life could disappear. "My doctors say I'm a walking miracle," Odom said. Doctors called his survival a miracle. But a miracle is not a pardon. Nevada did not erase the people Lamar had hurt, the years his children spent frightened, the broken trust, or the choices that brought him there. Waking up did not guarantee that trouble and contradiction would disappear. This is where inspirational documentaries usually clean the mess. The music rises, the survivor walks into sunlight, and the audience is told that suffering created a better man. Lamar Odom's story refuses that easy ending. He wrote a memoir called Darkness to Light. He trained, boxed, attempted basketball comebacks, spoke about dependency, and tried to repair relationships with his children. He called his life a story of triumph. There were still cameras, interviews, public promises, and attempts to turn recovery into another career. But none of them could recreate the old Lakers' schedule. The comeback belonged to ordinary life now, remembering what happened yesterday, rebuilding trust, answering the telephone, and staying present when there was no crowd to applaud it. Survival was a triumph. It was not a cure. In 2026, a new documentary returned Odom to the center of the argument. That same year, he faced another traffic-related legal case in Nevada. Neither fact can summarize the man. Together, they prove that waking from a coma did not turn a complicated life into a perfect redemption story. By then, the pattern was impossible to miss. School scandal, suspensions, fresh starts, championships, the block trade, Dallas, public trouble, Nevada. Every crisis seemed to end with another team, another contract, another camera, or another person willing to believe the worst had passed. Extraordinary talent had delayed consequences for years. Then the talent was gone, and the consequences arrived without anything left to negotiate. The Lakers gave Lamar a family, but they could not make every decision for him. Kobe could be his brother, not his conscience. A championship ring could prove that Odom belonged among basketball's best. It could not tell him what to do when the game stopped. That is the scandal underneath all the other scandals. America spent years asking why Lamar Odom was not more aggressive, more consistent, or more like Magic Johnson. Meanwhile, the bill outside basketball kept growing. The $75,000 stay was not the beginning of the collapse. It was the bill arriving after years of postponed payment. 4 days in Nevada did not create the grief. They removed the last places where it could hide. Lamar later summarized human weakness more directly than any documentary narrator could. "We make bad decisions, bro. That's all." That explanation is less glamorous than Hollywood, less convenient than blaming the Lakers, and harder than naming one villain. One bad decision followed another. One warning was survived, so the next warning felt survivable too. Lamar kept receiving another warning until Nevada nearly refused to give him one. Lamar Odom won 2 rings with Kobe Bryant. He helped the Lakers reach 3 consecutive NBA Finals, sacrificed a starting role, and became the best 6th man in basketball. He was not a celebrity accidentally wearing a uniform. He was a brilliant player whose versatility arrived before the league fully understood it. The $75,000 is real too. The owner said it covered a 4-day stay that ended with Odom unconscious and surrounded by emergency responders. Then came the 12 strokes and 6 heart attacks, the numbers Lamar said doctors gave him when they explained what his body had survived. Medicine helped, family stayed, friends came. His body fought. Lamar credits God. Whatever the reason, Lamar Odom received something the people he loved never received. One more morning. His mother did not get it. His grandmother did not get it. His infant son did not get it. Kobe Bryant would not get it years later. Lamar did. That does not make him innocent. It makes him responsible for what comes next.